Hey guys, this is Alex Huang with CardRunners.com. Over the last several months, we've introduced many new cash game pros to our team, and today I'm going to highlight some of these new names and faces with a video mashup of sorts with excerpts from their CardRunners videos. Overall, there's 6 new pros that I'm going to feature in this video with hands from each of them, and I just wanted to share them to give you a glimpse of what you can expect in future videos at CardRunners. First up, we have SSNL Pro, UMad Bro. He's a fixture at the 50 cent $1 and won 2 No Limit games at PokerStars. And in this hand we're about to show you, he's dealt pocket aces on the button and discusses how to handle a pretty poor board run out and the importance of having a balanced check-back range and how it influences your decisions throughout the hand.
So yeah, in this spot up here, we free bet the Maker EV, who's kind of like, he's one of the better eggs at 100, I guess. And I mean, I don't really mix with aces that much pre-flop. I just prefer to just free bet them almost all the time, I think. Just because obviously aces is a good hand. You want to put money in the pot with good hands in the simplest terms. So yeah, we actually choose to check back this Jack 10-8 flop. And the reasoning behind that is, in those spots, I guess, basically, I think I have all the jacks in my... I'd probably have all the jacks in our free bet range. Some of the 10s, some small portion of 8s, but very much on the lower side. Whereas he obviously has pretty... Given the way he plays, he probably has almost all of the sets in his range. So our kind of nut advantage from pre-flop free betting, because obviously we have aces and kings much more than he does, is our nut advantage when the board comes Jack 8-10 is almost completely destroyed, compared to if the board was like 2-2-4, obviously, where we still have a very, very heavy advantage in terms of nutted hands. But the other thing is as well, obviously, you've got all the king, queen, all the 9x, etc., which are all like really, really kind of like high equity on certain card hands. So we basically need to have a lot of protection in our check back range, I think. We need to have protection on all runouts. And aces here is, in my opinion, a hand which is very good to put in your check back range, because I don't think, firstly, you're not going to get free streets of aces here, I don't think you can just bet and expect to get called by worse enough versus someone decent. And I also think that blocking the king-queen outs is obviously great. And you've also obviously got the fact that if you want to choose strong hands to check back, and you choose, for example, pocket queens, the issue is in his calling range there's so many like, well, ace-9, ace-7 suited, ace-8 suited, ace-queen suited, for example. Like, I guess the fact is he won't fold those hands anyway, but they all have outs against the lower overpairs, whereas aces are just generally much more invulnerable, and when you're not going to get free streets of them anyway, I think it makes sense to put them into a check back range, just to kind of give yourself some protection from getting bluffed. Like, you don't really want to be capped when you check back, if that makes sense. Like, you don't want to just only check back here with king-jack, like ace-jack kind of hands, because then you're just going to end up, I mean, even if we check back aces, we're still pretty capped, we're just less capped, so, but you don't want to just let him be able to like overbet basically versus your range. And so I think checking back some aces, I mean, you obviously have to check back some pocket jacks, pocket 10s, pocket 8s as well, queen 9 if you have it, but I mean, basically, I don't think this is a board which you want to be c-betting huge amounts. And when you do c-bet, I think you want to be a bit more polarized, is what basically it all boils down to. So we get the king turn, and again, so ace-queen's just got there, king-queen's now got a pair, king-jack beats us, king-10 beats us, jack-king, etc. So our hand's not actually that strong now, and I think that even checking back again isn't an awful option at all, in my opinion. I think here I elect to bet just because of, I think, again, we're really willing to give away reads on specific players, but generally at 100 NL, people are more keen to lead with their better hands a very large proportion of the time, basically. So I think you're just that much more unlikely to see a double slow played like set here or straight. And obviously we block the ace queen as well. So I think I just went for kind of a thin value bet here, because there's still a lot of hands that will call you that you beat, like jack queen, 10 queen, king queen, etc. Ace jack obviously as well, even though we block that. So yeah, I think there's still value to be had, and I just chose to make a bet here, which I think is fine. I mean, there's definitely bluffs we want to play like this as well, because he does still have some folding range, and if we're checking back the flop with some of our jacks 10s, we're obviously also checking back the flop with some of our like 9x which if we check back on the flop, we obviously want to bet now because it has equity and some like backdoor spades that we check back. So I mean, we're not going to struggle to find bluffs, and aces is obviously it's strong enough to value bet basically. So I think that value betting is fine, but again, I think checking back isn't awful as well at all here. Again, like I said, a lot of hands have happened whilst I've been talking about this, so if there's anything you want to pick up on, just ask in the comments and I'll be sure to go over it. But I'm fairly sure most of them were fairly standard. And so I think what happens is we just bet and we get a fold. So let's have a look at what's happening here. So I think we'll see what happens. This ace queen on the bottom left, I called a 4-bet versus coin flip. Oh, actually, sorry, this ace's hand carries on. I better go into that. So on the river, I think I kind of make a bit of a mistake. I don't know. I basically choose to bet again, I think. And I'm not sure that's great, given what I just said about all the 2 pairs in his range. And I mean, it's not unreasonable for him to have some flushes. I think also the fact that the flush came in is kind of relevant because in his eyes, a delayed flush was one of our bluffs, if that makes sense. So our betting range has just got that much stronger, which means we kind of can't have a really strong betting range with hands in it that lose to some of his heroes, if that makes sense. It just makes more sense to check back and take the EV of checking back. So I think I deliberate and bet, but I do think it's probably a close check back here. But again, if 100L players are playing in such a way that they are leading a lot more of their value, it gets much closer. Like there's some people who I think you could definitely bet this against because they're just never ever getting to the river with a they're getting to the river much less with a hand that beats you because they're so much more kind of like, oh my god, I have a good hand, I need to bet it on the turn. So yeah, I think that it's very close, and but I actually think here it's probably a smallish mistake because it's definitely reasonable for him to have some king 10, king jack. And in terms of heroes, like what does he have? He has the queen jack, which might just turn into a check raise anyway. The king queen, some maybe king 9, but a lot of people aren't even defending that wide. And obviously he can have some 10x of spades. So I think like it's just going to be slightly too thin. So anyway, that's what's over. He just folds this bet. So we're now looking at this middle spot in the bottom, in the middle bottom, and here we have pocket 8s, and we call a free bet from this slightly nittier player. He's only got 6% free bet, which I think is still standard blind be blind. Like you can't really go folding pocket 8s if you want to open wide because you're just going to be like folding some outrageous percent. So even versus a nittier player, I think it's to defend. And obviously it's also going to be plus EV to call. It's not just the fact you're trying to defend the next percent, it's the fact that you're only calling hands which are plus EV to call in the first place, regardless of how much you're going to be folding.
Next up is Pro Hizentak. He's playing 2 tables of Zoom poker on PokerStars, and in this hand he discusses his game plan against the perceived range that he assigns to his opponent, and explains why he thinks his line is the optimal way to extract bets from the sorts of hands that he thinks his villain has.
This one is going to be an interesting one. I think the king 10 is just at the at the verge of the range of the stuff we wanna call on the small blind. I think it's fine. And now we have top pair and the back door, and now we have 2 pair, and again we have a choice between betting and I think check calling and check raising. I think what I'd normally want to do is to check raise. I think like he's going to have plenty of hands that like ace queen, etc. And I'm gonna stick with my plan and go for another check raise. And we had like 2 interesting spots, and now I'm gonna pause and talk about both of them. And he checks back. I'm guessing like he had a small pocket pair, so let's start with that one. Yeah, he has 6s, and I think while we might get some value, we missed some value like versus 6s. Well, not 6s. I mean, it's kind of borderline 6s through 9s. I think again, just blocking his calling range is not great, and I think he can still have some air that he's going to bluff river with, so like say 6-7 clubs 9-8 diamonds, stuff like that. So those might be stuff that, taking some sort of a delayed bluffing, and also some of his king eggs. So like say he had king jack that he didn't bluff flop with, so he might go for a delayed bet. So again, it's pretty sure, so like the most of stuff that I'm getting value from are going to be betting themselves, and I don't expect him to have queens jacks here.
Glanza Mike is our next pro. He's a former race car mechanic that began grinding the 180-man sit-and-goes before pursuing poker full-time and settling in at the 1-2 and 2-4 cash games at PokerStars. In this clip, he's playing at a 6-max table and raises pocket jacks under the gun against a weaker player in the big blind. He faces a turn donk bet and talks about what donk bets mean and how to react in these types of situations.
Jack's bottom right is a very straightforward open. I think this probably should be a 3-better fold. I don't think you should be flat calling 10-8 suited with a player to go. I elected to 3-bet here, which I don't mind. Especially a little bit deeper. Not too much, but he's got an extra $35 over his 100 big blind stack, so makes a hand like 8-10 suited a little bit more interesting. Can make some pretty cool hands post flop. Not on that flop though. We do have a gut shot, but I am just going to be checking that flop. Bottom right table, pretty straightforward c-bet against the weaker player. I'm going to be bombing that because he's going to be wanting to call like 6-7, 7-8, hands that actually have pretty good equity versus us. So I'm going to want to get as much money in as soon as possible. On the turn on the top right table, I think he has more queens than we do here. So I again think this is a check. I don't think we rep too well when we bet this turn if we're trying to represent the queen. I think his range certainly has more queens than us. I think he has hands like ace queen, king queen, queen jack, that he almost certainly wouldn't bet most of those on the flop. So I think this is another check. Very good turn card for us on the bottom right table. Ace-6 is a very standard defend, blind versus blind. And see what he does. He's opening 40% blind versus blind, c-betting roughly 65%. King-9, we could have actually opened that with the weaker player in the blind. Definitely would have opened if he was in the big blind. Got a few decisions here, so I'll pause it for a minute. I think it's going to be the last decisions of the video. Actually, we've just gone over 30 minutes, so top left, I'll do these hands, then we'll call it a video. So top left, he's c-bet about third pot a game. We could well have the best hand here with ace high. I think we're going to have the best hand a decent chunk of the time, especially because he's c-betting like 65%. We've also got a backdoor flush draw along with our ace high, so I think this is a pretty standard call to just a third pot c-bet. Top right with a 10-8. I still don't see too much merit to a bet on this river. I still think we need to check Tim. I think his range is probably stronger than ours still. Although now on this river I have maybe pocket 10s, which I do block. Yeah, I just think his range is stronger than ours still on this river. I think we should be checking to him and seeing what he does. We may still win some of the times against if he's just going to check down with maybe 6s through 9s, so that'd be a nice outcome. We can still have some sort of slow played hands here. You can still have hands like Jack 10. He elected not to bet the turn in case I had a queen or something like that, or King 10, even Ace 10. Sorry, Ace, Jack 10 or something like that to make a rivered full house. Bottom right table, the weaker player leads. It's a great turn for us, great turn for our hand. So we have a decision to make whether we want to raise and get all the money on the turn, or just to call and let him bluff us potentially. I think I elected to just call here because I didn't really want to raise if he was bluffing us. He could have a hand like ace 5, ace 6, 9, 10, jack 10. I mean, there's actually a ton of bluffs he could have here. He's just going to fold if I shove. So, although a few of his hands that he's donk betting with have decent equity versus us, like maybe 8-6 or something like that, I think it's probably worth calling and just letting him bluff off his stack. I think it's probably higher EV than shoving and getting him to fold his bluffs. This guy overbets the river, and it's a pretty straightforward fold. I think shoving there is pretty ridiculous. I think folding is the only play. The turn check to us, top left, so we check back. We can still win with ace high. River is checked to us again. I expect to win here a decent chunk of the time. He's got jack 7. We do pick up the pot. It's always nice. Bottom right. The weaker player's just deciding what to do. Not the greatest river in the world, because like I said, I think he could potentially donk bet a hand like 6-8 or 5-8 or pocket 7s, but he's only left himself $7 and there's 130 in the pot. So I'm just going to raise and get his last $7 in. If he's got the best hand, then fair play to him, but if not, then I can make an extra $7. It's not a lot, but it all helps. Let me see what happened on this top right table. I isolated the weaker player when he limped. He donk bet the flop. He checked the turn to me. Let's pick up the action. I think on this turn we can check or we can bet. I don't really mind either because we've got an open straight. He actually folds for his last $7.
Simon Cooling, better known as CoinFlip Psy on PokerStars, owns one of the largest win rates at the 50 Cent 1 and 1-2 games on PokerStars, and he's our next pro in this video. In this clip, he uses a hand player to dissect a multi-way pot that he played at 50 Cent 1, and discusses the dynamics in a multi-way pot, how the deeper stacks influence decisions, and how position will also change and alter the way that he plays the hand relative to the weaker players in the pot.
This hand is interesting. I guess it really focuses on the dynamic when you have a reg and a fish in the pot with yourself as well. So we get a limp here from MP from 55-20 fish. He's a whale. He's pretty aggressive as well. So yeah. This is the important part. This has got a good reg here running 26-19, and he makes it 3.6x out of the small. Now, if he'd gone bigger with his sizing here, for me, Queen Jack off is a fold. But like for this sizing, we're getting a good price with 2.6 BBs to call, and we've still got a 50 BB fish behind here. So yeah, simple call for me. Based on that, as I say, if he'd gone over 4x here, I think this one's a fold, and obviously call our suited ones. Fish calls come Jack 6 deuce, and Pete C bets into both of us. Nothing more to say here, just easy call versus the sizing. Recreational player comes along as well. 4 on the turn, and Pete bets again. So now he's gone half pot. Again, it's pretty small sizing. I guess this is where it gets really interesting. In essence, we are certainly ahead of the fish's range, but at this point, I would say we're probably losing to Pete. However, well, I'll explain that point as well. If he's betting into 2 players out of position, double barreling here, with a board that has no draws, he has 0 bluffs here, like literally 0. He has to have pretty much my hand plus in terms of his value range. So, to put it into simpler terms, my intention here wasn't to call to take my showdown on the river, because I feel like as I say, his range is just too strong when he bets into both of us. Although the fact he's gone smaller sizing makes me like the spot more. The thing is, Pete knows that I will always flat all of my nutted hands on the turn here. Partly because that's kind of the game I tend to play, but most importantly because this recreational player here is behind us, so we want to keep him in as much as possible. This is where our money is made through these type of players. So it makes perfect sense to just flat all of my range here. And given how few sort of draws and drawy hands are on this board, it makes sense for us to to call and see if we can win on the river. The other important thing to note here, we've got a blocker to top set, and also our stacks are really deep with Pete. So these are both, important things. In summary, I think we're just going to have a good chance to win on the river, considering most of his range is made up of overpairs, which are going to be super scared of my uncapped range, which contains 0 draws or air on the river. But cycle, based on all those factors, all these things were really going through my head. As I say, I'm not calling the turn because I think I'm ahead of his range. It's because, again, I'm thinking ahead and thinking because what my range looks like and what his range is likely on this board. And the stack depths as well. All factors to consider for our play on the river. So when he checks to us, I feel like this is where my plan can come into action. I think importantly we rep a lot better than he. Well, I say a lot better. We certainly rep better than he does on this board. He knows if I have like queens here, I will probably just check back and take my showdown. He knows if I have ace jack here, I'll probably take my showdown here. So he's probably quite happy maybe check folding like queens or kings. He feels that those hands are probably maybe too thin to go for value. Or as ridiculous as it seems, but because of this recreational player and because of the dynamic of this hand, it is probably too thin because I'm going to have a hard time calling with that. As I said before, I wasn't calling the turn I had top pair against him here, and I wasn't feeling comfortable. So let alone calling a river bet with a hand like this or a hand like ace jack for 3 streets. So as I said, I think we do rep better than he does on this board. Most players, including myself, ISO very nitty out of the small blind. So there's a good chance he doesn't ISO pocket 2s or possibly even pocket 6, which I will always call his raise with, especially given his sizing. I can also have a combo of 6-4 suited and possibly even 4 combos of 5-3 suited, which he pretty much, again, never ISOs either. So, as I said on the turn, to be bluffing here, I pretty much have to have, pretty much have to have turned Jack X into a bluff. I suppose I could have 6-5 suited, but I could have 5-6 suited, I suppose. But I think having the Jack blocker is better in this spot than having a 6 blocker, because as I say, it might be irrelevant if he doesn't ISO pocket 6s out of small. So I can't float or call any worse hands on the turn with efficiency still in the pot. So because I don't have any draws, because I don't have any floats, etc., like I must be right at the bottom of my range here. And then for me to now bluff this river, I have to have then turned the Jack X into a bluff. And it's a pretty hard assumption to make, considering most players at 100 would take their showdown with a Jack here. The other thing to note is, he is a very good player. Certainly, certainly easily top 5 at this stake. So he's capable of making a big fold here. It's always important that you know the player's capable of making a good fold here. So with all this in mind, I turn my hand into a bluff with a pretty substantial bet. It's a weird spot because I don't rep that many combos, but I just have to have it here. That's what it comes down to ultimately. And he does make the fold. He's actually a friend of mine, and he folded ace jack, which is what I was hoping for. It was a good result in the end.
Next up is Zayla, better known as Red and Nexella 747 on PokerStars. He's a high-stakes no-limit pro who made his debut at CardRunners back in July. The hand, which is played at 10-20 features him defending his big blind with ace-6 offsuit against a button open from a very tough regular, and he finds himself in a challenging spot on the river and talks about hand ranges, board texture, game flow as he contemplates this tricky spot.
On the bottom left, I think it's going to be a quite interesting hand, where we have a reg who's opening almost 60% on the button, which is, believe it or not, pretty wide for my stakes. We have two pair, which is obviously cool. I'm going to call down on pretty much every run out, of course. However, he tanks for a very long time, and in the end, he's going to elect to check back. So when he checks back, I just assume he has, he might have some weak ace, of course. He can have a queen X. He's going to have smaller pair under ace quite a bit. He's not going to have, well, might have some complete air, but if he has some stuff with some backdoor straight draws, I just expect him to bet them quite a bit. So for that reason, I don't think he's going to have too many Jack 10. Actually can have King Jack for sure. He doesn't have too much Jack 10. I think there's a gut shot, and I think most people just bet this on the flop. He's not going to have 10-8, just because, again, I expect the bets on the flop. And however, we are perceived of all of his hands ourselves, and so our betting range in the turn is going to be pretty wide, even if we don't take a stab with complete trash, like, I don't know, Jack 4 or something. So even if you don't take stab with several hands, we still have quite a wide range. And then we get to river. It's definitely a river where we have pretty much all 7-8 combos, so 6 and 7-8 combos. So definitely have a relatively strong range here, and we have quite a few 2-pair as well. But saying that, still pretty high up our range when it gets river. So we definitely want to bet pretty good top 2-pair. And I think I'm going to get called, well, definitely by an ace-x, and maybe even a bit wider. I mean, yeah. I mean, there's an argument actually for betting bigger, just because our range is so much stronger than his range, because we have 7-8. But I think the sizing is fine. I don't think we want him to fold ace-x. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. Actually, it could be better to bet a bit bigger. I'm a bit on the, it's a bit borderline. But anyway, I think with my sizing, it's okay. I don't want to. I mean, I can definitely have a lot of air as well. So yeah. So yeah, I don't want to make it too expensive with those. So anyways, I'm betting this, and yeah, let's look at, while he's tanking, let's look at some other tables in the meantime, because it's quite a lot going on. The top left, we have a very tight reg. I think it's a 14-10. It's full ring stats, but still pretty tight. He opens middle position, and I'm going to like to call here with ace-king. Straight betting is an option, I guess, but his range is so tight, and I definitely want to have a strong flattening range as well, because I definitely want to flat a few weaker hands as well. So I definitely don't want to have just medium strength hand when I flat there. And like we've seen before, Invoker seems to be getting a bit out of line, so we're hoping for a squeeze as well from his side. On the bottom right, we have pocket eights, which is an open in the straight draw and a pair and some backdoor flush draw. So it's a pretty strong flop, and we are ahead quite a bit, but definitely a good hand to have in our check back range, I think. So I'm just going to check back here. And let's go back now to the hand on the bottom left, where we get raised. And I mean, I definitely see him capable of having some bluffs, turning some pairs into bluffs like some Queen X or 6X. So I think at lower stakes we can fold here quite a lot, because it's very hard for them to have complete air, and people at low stakes are just not going to turn, or some would. They obviously have this type of players, but I think most players there just don't turn any may turn into a bluff. But when you play 10-20, it's definitely a possibility for that to happen. And in terms of value hands, I would say his value hands are pocket aces, which obviously we block, but he can still have some. He can definitely have pocket nines. I don't think he has many 7-8 combos. Maybe a couple. But I think he's going to bet a lot of those on the flop anyway, and especially the sizing. It's just streams my bet. It's just I might be wrong, but I just think he's just going to bet bigger if he has some nuts. Looks a bit like well, wouldn't say thin, but thinnish raise, and maybe a cheap bluff. If he expects us to bet ace X quite often, and we can definitely bet fold ace X here, like ace 10, say. So this is pretty much his value hands, which is pretty narrow in terms of value. But I don't know exactly how wide his bluff range is, and it's a bit strange spot, like I said, because we have our range is much stronger. We have 16 straight combo pretty much. Which is a nuts, and then we have quite a few two pair. So it's a bit of a tough spot. It's a bit borderline, and I think after the session I actually did a bit of analysis, and to see from a GTO perspective how wide I need to call here to not be exploitable. And ace X off is pretty much right. On the line of what we should call and what we should fold. I think it came out that we probably should call most of it. So calling here is definitely okay. It's actually also an interesting spot to bluff jam, 3-bet river if we had any 7 blocker or 8 blocker. Just because I think he's going to give us a lot of credit, because we have so many 7 numbers. I guess even in general, even a hand like this, if we decide to not call it, then I think wouldn't be too awful to just jam our entire range, because we have so many. Like I said, we have 16 combos, and I think most of his combos at raises river are not the nuts, and people just don't think are going to give us too much credit for bluff jamming this river. So I think it's probably good to say an exploitative play to just jam here. A lot, but definitely jamming here with 7 and 8 is I think it's extremely good spot. But anyway, I like to call here, and he sees showing up as pocket 9, so I think I'm happy with the call, but it's definitely a little bit borderline. So let's see how it develops. On the bottom right, we check back like you've seen. On the turn, he bet into us, and we called. We still had open ended straight draw, and there are 2 flush draws out there, so it's definitely a turn we want to call again. And the river we have a boat, and I think I don't know. It's a bit of a spot where I think you can either bet quite small, or bet quite big. Just to try to rep counterfeit pair like 7x or maybe something else, or because it's just very hard for us to have bluffs here, I guess. So I don't know. It's going to be very hard to get paid either way, and I think I'm just going to overbet, and he's going to fold very quickly. I think he would have folded probably to any size.
Last up is Ben a Bad Beat Raven. Ben is a popular poster in the 2+2 community and is a UK-based pro who's established himself as one of the top players at the small and mid-stakes no-limit games on PokerStars. This excerpt comes from his video series at CardRunners focused on bluffing, and in this particular spot, he 3-bets King-Jack offsuit against a button open and discusses what to consider when barreling, how board texture influences hand ranges, and more.
So the first hand we've got King Jack off in the small blind. We're at a pound table. These are actually new tables to PokerStars, and so far I've been running really, really, really good there. The fish tend to be really juicy, mostly UK fish, and from what I've seen, they don't run that much, but when they do run, these games are just so much better than the regular games. So it gets raised on the button by Wallen Malone. So Wallen Malone he's an excellent player, one of the best players at 6max, one of the guys I play the most against and battle with quite a lot. So I have King Jack off in the small blind, and I decide to 3-bet. This isn't something that I do, I'd say, that much with a hand like King Jack off. I'd obviously much rather 3-bet a hand like King Jack suited, or like Queen Jack suited or whatever. However, I do actually feel that King Jack off, I'm 3-betting for value against this particular player. His fold to 3-bet, as you can see, is 47% here, and I know for a fact that he calls 3-bets really, really wide. He'll call hands with, I don't know, like Queen 9 off, Queen 9 suited, 6-8 suited, 6-7 suited, 4-5 suited even, all ace-x suited. Of course, we're losing to that, but we fare pretty well against those hands. Probably we'll call like King 10 off, Queen 10 off, maybe some Jack 10 off as well. So I'd say against that range, we are 3-betting for value. I mean, a lot of the time, so I am happy to 3-bet. Also, if Trevon, this player here, he's from UK, was to cold 4, he does cold 4 a lot. There's a good chance I can min 5 fold as a bluff, or fold, of course. But I am quite conscious that this guy does cold 4 a bit, so I'm not just gonna roll over and fold every time he cold 4s. Given this, particularly, we have very good blockers as well if we do get cold 4 bet. So we get called. So as I said, his range to me is pretty wide right now. I'd say we're ahead of most of his hands that he's going to call with. Even though he does flat all these kind of weaker hands I haven't actually seen him flat aces and kings like at all against me, just because I've been 3-betting him quite a lot. So therefore, I would say that it's less likely he's got a hand that dominates us. The only hand I really feel like he's dominating us with is ace Jack or King Queen, but I feel that the rest of those hands we're either flipping against or we have him beat. So we see Queen 4-6 with a flush draw. So obviously our options are now to check call, check fold, or bet. I feel that with the King of Diamonds and with a backdoor flush draw, with the fact that we can turn a king for the best hand, given the fact we can turn an ace to barrel, we can turn a 10 to barrel, a 9, obviously a diamond's a great card to barrel. I feel that I'd want to be c-betting and re-evaluating on the turn a lot. So I do go ahead and c-bet just about half pots. As I'm sure you're aware, this is my standard sizing, maybe slightly on the small side, but it's extremely easy to get in stacks, even if I bet this small on the flop. And we get a call. So now it's clear to see that he can have so many hands still. We can say, let's say ace queen, he can have jack queen, he can have king queen, he can have pocket 4s, he can have pocket 6s, he can have flush draws, he can have floats such as, I don't know, ace 5 of hearts, ace 10 of hearts, ace jack of hearts, ace, not even like ace 9 of hearts. He can also have hands like 7-8 of hearts or diamonds, or just 7-8 suited floating with a gut shot. So it's very clear to see that he can have like a ton of hands still that he's going to want to call the flop with. So on a 9 of diamonds, I mean, I don't really feel like I have any choice but to barrel this turn. There is an argument for check shoving this turn. I don't really like check calling, because if we check call and then we have to check the river, he can check back with like real minimal showdown, and we beat like no showdown at all if he does have a pair or obviously a flush. By check shoving, I feel that he's very rarely going to be betting hands behind on the turn that he's going to be willing to fold. The only real hand that I can think of that he's going to be, well, a selection of hands that he's going to be betting behind the turn with that will fold to a shove are his ace-x of hearts, which he's pretty much got to bet the turn with, and like his 7-8s. But even his 7-8s might be favourite to check back turn and then bet river if we were to check again, because he might take that line with, let's say, like king queen or jack queen or something like that. So with all that taken into account, I go ahead and c-bet half pot again. So obviously this turn is fantastic for our hand and our perceived range as well, because now we've got, for starters, at face value, we've got a gut shot and we've got an overstill and we've got a flush draw. I suppose that if I had like ace queen here, even without a diamond, I would definitely be two barreling. If I had kings, aces, I'd certainly be two barreling. If I had flushes, I'd be two barreling. If I had draws, as I do now, I'd be two barreling. I think that it's fair to say that my value and my bluffs are not too dissimilar, I would say. But it is going to be very hard for him to distinguish between whether or not we're bluffing and when we're value betting here. So I am pretty happy to value bet this turn. And he does make the call again. So of course he can have nut flushes now. He can still have his queen x. He can even have like hands like tens with the diamonds. He could have again 7-8 for an up and down. That might be a little bit ambitious, hoping he's got 7-8. He can certainly have 9x of hearts, because he's going to be wanting to float those hands again. And not to mention a hand like, if he has just the ace of diamonds, he's probably going to be likely to call again. So that is why I do bet again. So the river comes another 9, which is actually quite an interesting card, because now we can, if he was to have, let's say, 4-6 suited or something like that, which is what I said he could have pre-flop, he's obviously going to be counterfeit, which is going to, if we have aces or kings or ace queen, this river's great for us to be shoving against. Also, I just think it's important to mention also his went to showdown is 24%, and actually versus hero his went to showdown is 19%, which is actually extremely low, particularly against me. So I think the main thing to consider here is what hands we rep when we shove. I feel that we can certainly rep ace queen. Like, I would definitely be value shoving ace queen plus, so therefore I'd be shoving kings, I'd be shoving aces, I'd be shoving all my flushes, and of course if I had 9x, I'd be shoving my 9x as well. The main reason I really want to be shoving is because I don't expect him to think that I'm bluffing all that often on this run out. Because when the 9 pairs, I mean, I can't really count, I can't really be perceived to expect him to fold like ace queen if he's got it, for example. But the problem with that is that if he does have a hand like ace queen and he doesn't expect me to be bluffing him, then I am trying to, with that logic, trying to fold out a really strong range. Also, I don't really block that much apart from the king of diamonds, so obviously I block a nut flush draw. I just kind of feel like with his went to showdown being so low, and the fact that I don't expect him to think that I'm going to be bluffing with my hands, then I pretty much am only left with like king high flushes, nut flushes, queens full. I probably would 3-bet 4s out the small blind to 3-bet 5-bet, maybe even 6s as well, and he definitely knows that as well. So I do have tons of value. He doesn't really have a choice but to call turn with his queen jack, king queen with queen jack, ace queen with a diamond, or queen 10 with a diamond, and therefore I can't really be two barreling and not shoving river. So that is exactly what I go ahead and do. So he doesn't think about it for long at all and does snap call, and has 9s full of queens, which obviously I'm never getting him to fold that hand. But the fact that if he can have queen 9 suited, then he can have queen 10 suited as well, or even queen 10 off as well, king queen, and jack queen. So I do, even though he's shown up with this hand, I do kind of expect him to call 2 with a queen and then actually fold the river. So I am actually overall pretty happy with my bluff.
Ready to join CardRunners? Email us at support@CardRunners.com with subject line mashup to receive a special sign-up bonus.